Not crazy, just stupid. You're an ignorant child playing dress-up in his father's legacy. Oh, I know all about you and the Cooper clan.
Then you'll understand why this eye needs to be destroyed.
Short-sighted.
Sly 2 is a fantastic 3D platformer released in late 2004 that improves on the first in just about every way and will leave you scratching your head on ways it could have been better. Okay, there's the review, bye, thank you. Nah, but really, if you've seen my Sly 1 review, then you know that I totally dug the gameplay and fell in love with the characters pretty much instantly. Sly 2 Band of Thieves brings its A game and converted me from someone who liked Sly Cooper into an absolute fan. Sucker Punch Productions pretty much nailed it and left me with very few qualms. I try to keep plot summaries short these days, and I want to add that I'm not trying to undersell the plot here, but on a surface level it kind of follows a similar pattern to the first game. You travel around the world to notable members of the new Claw gang, steal an item from them, maybe beat them up, then move on to the next. I gotta spoil the first game here real quick, but this time you're taking the individual parts of Clockwork back to help ensure that they don't fall into the wrong hands. And look at that, they already have. Where Sly 2 excels, though, is how it weaves narrative as a continuing through line for each episode. In the first game, every bad guy felt kind of disconnected from the rest, despite being part of an organization, but here you definitely get a sense that the villains are part of a larger operation. Every time you thwart a bad guy, you not only feel good for getting a part of Clockwork back, but you feel like you just left a major dent in their operations along the way. That's pretty satisfying. Bolstering this sense of accomplishment even more is how Sly 2 really hones in on making you feel like a thief. There are some gameplay reasons I'll get to, but for narrative purposes, in each episode, you explore a villain's base of operation, gather some intel, then plan a grand heist. Each mission within these episodes makes your work feel rewarding, and watching it all unfold at the end is rather satisfying. Couple that with characterization that capitalizes on everything that made this universe interesting in the first game, while maturing things just enough to appeal to more of an audience of any age, and you have a pretty damn good structure for a 3D platformer plot. I will say that I found the ending to be a bit lackluster, but honestly after thinking on it for a few days, I really don't know how else they could have concluded things. And even then, the final minute still managed to set up something that I'm surprised a air-quote kids game would do that emotionally affected me, and still manages to top things off with a bow that left me grinning. So yeah. I tried to avoid spoiling anything specific there, but aside from a few average acting performances contrasting against fantastic ones, and feeling underwhelmed by how the story climaxed, Sly 2 is a pretty engaging ride that I'm excited to experience again someday. I already want to play it again. Thankfully for all the narrative improvements within, there are plenty of gameplay improvements as well. Sly feels even better to control now, largely in his jumping abilities, though the addition of a run button is also very welcome. Jumping, attacking, climbing, and tightrope walking are all pleasant and responsive, rarely leaving me wanting. I noticed that the blue indicator letting you know what Sly can sneak on is now on any area, taking out some potential guesswork Sly 1 made you go through on occasion, and always making them easier to notice in tight situations. There are also some new moves like pickpocketing guards for currency, helping to build on the thief motif, and helping to fund purchases from a move shop like a paraglider or an alarm clock distraction, etc. Instead of exploring through segmented hub worlds for missions, every world is now one area with no loading as you explore through it. When joined with genuinely interesting locations and smartly designed areas, this makes hub world exploration easier to manage. On top of being easier to manage, a fair number of missions also take place in these hub worlds, making them feel more like a worthwhile part of the game than the first game's hub worlds. Clue bottles are also now hidden here instead of within specific missions, so if you go for them, you really get to search and appreciate these areas, in addition to unlocking moves that, frankly, I again couldn't really find much use for. I feel that the only hub area that was a bit of a miss was the second Contessa world. This area has a lot of verticality that is awkwardly designed and isn't entirely fun to navigate through like the others, and I was honestly pretty glad it was over when I finished it. Sly is also rocking a health bar this time around, instead of the 1 or 2 hits he could take in Sly 1. While I think the first game managed its system well, there is no doubt in my mind that this health bar is an improvement, since you're more likely to be in combat in this game, and the bosses are generally more hands-on than before, and are better because of that. Enemy AI is what impressed me even more. Guards start out pretty easy and don't give much chase, but by the end of the game they'll be very dedicated to finding you, even going so far as to chase you around rooftops until you can finally manage to lose them with skill. Larger enemies have a flashlight cone that marks a clear area to avoid, and smaller enemies don't have that marked radius but are easy enough to avoid or dispatch. They also respond to sound, breaking clue bottles, ringing bells, and even running too close to them can alert them to your presence. It's just a lot more fun to deal with this game's enemies. A great job is done of making more complex enemy AI while still keeping the game at a pretty cozy difficulty rating. It's also a noted improvement after Sly 1 had some guards that you just straight up couldn't avoid since they'd block linear pathways and always notice you. Sly 2 gives you every opportunity to be stealthy, and generally if you get caught, it's your own fault. I like that. A pretty big addition I glossed over is that Bentley and Murray are directly playable this time around. And they feel a lot like Sly, which I really appreciated. They just lack his new pickpocket move and don't have his ability to walk across tight ropes or swing across hooks. Bentley focuses on putting enemies to sleep from a distance, then taking them out with a bomb. His missions usually come down to some twin-stick shooter missions or shoot-em-up sections with RC vehicles. Murray is more of a powerhouse who can take enemies out quickly and usually gets tasked with carrying heavy objects and throwing things. He also occasionally gets to pilot some tanks and turrets, which is pretty neat. I was a little concerned at first when I saw that these two were playable, but they feel so similar to Sly, and they feature fun minigames that don't drag on, so it all equals out to a positive addition. And speaking of the minigames, I am thankful for no crab shooting. In terms of things that don't really impact gameplay directly, let's just go down the list of presentation improvements. For one thing, character models look even better, particularly Sly Cooper himself, and animate much more nicely too. Well, in terms of gameplay animation. Cutscenes still feature stiff, awkward animations, but it gets the job done, and you can tell they were being more ambitious in terms of the non-hand-drawn scenes, due to some better cinematography and the scale of what is going on in these moments. Not a huge leap forward, but one I certainly appreciated. Even the hand-drawn cutscenes I found more engaging this time around. I still don't know why, but they just didn't really strike me in the first game. Sly 2 also just sports much better writing. Right out of the gate, Murray was cracking me up with a line about bending a gate just like he'd bend the truth. Bentley's got a great line involving driving a stick shift too. I feel like I can never overstress just how much I love these characters. Okay, I've dodged it this long. I should mention Carmelita's voice. That's the thing that'll get pointed out if I don't mention it. Yeah, so her voice actress changed, thusly Carmelita sounds different and dropped the accent. I actually didn't mind this, and while I thought the actual delivery of her lines sounded more awkward, I totally dug the sound, and it felt like a natural fit for Carmelita. I pretty much forgot all about her old voice immediately. What's slightly awkward though is that this same actress provides a similar voice for another major character in this game, Neela, and just throws on a bit of a different accent for it. And while the two sound a bit similar, I actually wound up thinking she gave a better performance as Neela. Still, totally acceptable acting. These things just stand out to me when you have characters like Bentley. God, I love Bentley. Hell, even Sly's calm, suave persona works in some incredibly subtle emotional range that helps him stand tall. I was a little worried he'd come off a bit boring after a while, but there's some good stuff here. Okay, sorry I'm rambling about the characters again. Just give me a few more seconds to pitch this to you. Let me propose something and skip out of the timeline here. Let's jump to the present. The Sly Cooper movie, pretty much dead in the water, right? My fingers are 100% crossed. They tone down the character designs to be closer to the games, bring back Sly's game actor, then just make a Netflix series. Makes way more sense than the movie, and with characterizations like these, they could definitely hold their own for a short series. Think about it. Now that I've said it, you want it, right? If anyone happens to know the right people at PlayStation, please pass this idea along to them, thanks. Anyway, video games! I've still got some more assorted praise. Really wanted to mention how much I like the environmental choices this time. Going around to Paris, Prague, India, Cairo, you name it. All of these locations were great choices and represented smartly. Again, though, that second Contessa area didn't tickle my fancy, but overall I did like the variety. Even just in setting, these felt way more memorable than locale choices from the last time. Helps that the graphics in general just look very nice too. Obviously, I'm playing in HD on the PS3 ports, which have a few share of issues, but I know that's just the port's fault and not the original game's intended design. The music score is also fantastic, doing a great job at supporting the atmosphere laid down by the game's art style, while not resting on its laurels either, standing out with some inspired, memorable tracks. It's an incredibly small touch, but those brass blares every time you defeat an enemy, accompanied by comic book style onomatopoeia, is such an inspired, stylish design choice that I can't help but grin at every single time. It's really hard to think of genuine negatives for Band of Thieves. a couple of linked omissions from the first game may bother you, unless I was just missing something obvious like usual. I couldn't find a way to replay individual missions. I remember thinking the time trials in the first game were a pretty neat touch, but that doesn't seem to be a feature here. Now, personally, I don't find this to be much of an issue. To me, each mission was part of a grander scheme, and I'd rather experience that grander scheme again on a fresh playthrough as opposed to just tracking down individual missions and to replay them. But it is a little odd that the game doesn't even let you access these missions in the hub world. Again, not in a mission that impacts how I feel, but it's fair to want a way to replay those objectives, I think, without going through the entire game again. Other than that, I mean, I pointed out the few nitpicks I had. I could add a few more, I guess. I wish turret controls felt tighter to aim with. I wish the tank controls were a little more sensical than just finagling with the analog sticks. I wish Murray had a more interesting minigame style akin to Bentley's shooters. Yeah, I'm really struggling here to find anything actually major, so let's just wrap this up. So in summation, by blending fun gameplay hooks and by dangling a tasty narrative carrot in front of the player, Sly 2 Band of Thieves makes for a gaming experience that's hard to put down once it's gotten a hold of you. If you couldn't tell, my final verdict is that I loved Sly 2. I 100%ed it even. You got that nice shiny platinum trophy, yeah, it feels good. I'm really enjoying this series and looking forward to the next game, Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves. I've heard some mixed things, so I'm curious to get started. Let me know what you all think. Until then, I'm MykonosFan. This has been Learning to Love PlayStation, and thank you very much for watching. This episode was generously supported by the following Patreon producers. Thank you.